You are watching the Movicon HMI Editor Basics self-guided video tutorial series. In this video, you will use the Minilab document as a step-by-step guide to create the Quick Start project. Hi, I'm Matt Pelletier. For this video, I'm assuming you have already completed the previous videos in this series. In the end, you'll have a super simple working system with the HMI hardware communicating to an MP3300 IEC controller. Here's the end result. I'm operating the smart panel HMI hardware remotely. You can see that there with VNC viewer. And it's communicating to the MP3300 IEC controller. I've got one button and one light and some data in. There we go. And some data out. This should look really familiar because it's the same project as shown in the prerequisite Quick Start video. The Minilab document is going to be your guide for success in both this and the up-and-coming sections of this training series. So would you please open up that PDF called Quick Start? And since this is the first Minilab, let's look over it together here real quickly. All the Minilabs will have this same format with requirements, overview, and goal, followed by an outline of the steps with increasing detail here in outline form. The requirements include the demo components plus the provided MotionWorks IEC Quick Start project. The major steps are outlined in the overview. And keep in mind throughout all this what your final goal is: to have a simple project that runs on the HMI and communicates to the controller. Let's just skim over the contents now. In the first part here, we will use MotionWorks IEC to run the Quick Start project. And the key takeaway is to check the boxes for OPC for every variable that you would like to communicate in and out of the controller to the HMI. Moving on, here we'll do the official process to start a Movicon project correctly for the correct HMI, where you need to consider the communication protocol, PLC, and specify the controller's IP address. You can test communications and then get the variables or tags directly from the PLC, meaning the controller. Those tags will be in your Movicon project, and then you can start creating buttons and lights and adding the variables and data to those and changing their properties. The numeric data is in the edit box display. We have some alignment tips here to make everything straight. You'll test everything out first here in the runtime. That's right on your computer screen in Movicon. And then the final step is to upload it to the HMI itself. I'll show you how to do that. And you run it. I'll show you how to set it so that it runs at power up through the system menu here. I've got a few troubleshooting tips and then a checklist of what it should be doing. Past this, there's a reference if you want to know how to connect to the VNC server like we did before. And in many of these mini labs, I'll put an optional exploration part at the very end, and it's just that, it's optional. But if you want to go above and beyond, this gives you some ideas of what else you could do in addition to what's already been described in the mini lab. That's about all I have to say in this section as far as overview and concepts. So the rest of this video, I'll demonstrate how to use this Minilab document to get it all running. If you're stuck or want to be sure you're not doing anything wrong, you can go ahead and play the video. You're also welcome just to follow along with me and pause the video if you need any more time. But the intention of the Minilab is for you to use that document and pause the video and see if you can do it on your own. Then when you're done, play through the rest of the video, and everything should look really familiar since you just did it all yourself, but see if you can pick up any other tips or details you might have missed. Okay, here's the solution for the Quick Start Minilab. I'm going to go ahead here to step number 1. And run the HMI Quick Start project in the MP3300 IEC controller. We got MotionWorks IEC open. And now I will open HMI Quick Start from the class materials with file open, yes to unzip. All right, file open project. Navigate to the directory that I've saved this in from the class materials. And I've got HMI Quick Start Rev D. I'll unzip this. It can unzip to the same folder, yes, and yes. Okay. Now it says I need to set the IP address using right-click on Resource Settings Change Parameter to Resource. So right-click Settings Parameter. Now I'm connected to IP address ending in 83. Okay, that'll be different for you depending on your demo. I'm on demo 13 with the IP address ending in 83. Now we have to download this project to the controller. So make the project with build make. Open the project control dialog with the online menu, project control. Expect to see that running. And now I need to click stop, download, yes, cold, and yes. So we got stop, download, we'll do a cold, start, yes, and it's running. Now it's running the HMI Quick Start project. Step D, monitor the project in debug mode. Open the HMI POU and turn on debug mode with online debug. Here's the HMI POU. And debug mode, looks like that was already on, but that's under online debug. And that highlights the ladder code with color code to show the state of the contacts and coils. That looks the same. Step 3 is to open the global variables and navigate to user variables. From the project tree window, global variables, that's at the bottom. Okay, double click to open that. Move this out of the way here. And I'll scroll down and I found user variables. Now I should turn off debug mode. There's this little shortcut for it. Debug on off. And check the boxes for OPC. These are the variables that I want to send for OPC. By the way, if you know anything about MotionWorks IEC, you could also just open these one by one and check OPC right here in the code. That's relatively new. And now download changes with online download changes. So go to online, download changes, and that's done here. Running, and it puts you back in debug mode automatically. That's pretty much it for MotionWorks IEC. Let's go on to the Movicon project. Open Movicon, and if it's already open, use File Closed to be sure you don't have any previous projects open. Then go to New Project, and it says to choose WinCE platform. We're going to name it Quick Start, and add the COM driver called Yaskawa MPIC PLCI. All right, so that's WinCE platform. Open. Let's call this Quick Start. Now you do want to pay attention to where it's saving it to. This will depend on the previous use. So I'm going to delete mine, so I just go to here, Documents, Movicon Projects, and let's click Next. And we want to get to the COM driver, so here we go, add COM IO driver. We're looking for Yaskawa at the bottom, PLCI. That's what we got. All right, next here, now the default screen width. This depends on the panel that you'll use, and the panel we have here is a 7-inch panel with 800 by 480. So let's do 800 by 480. You can change color if you want to, or I'll just leave it white here. And next, next again, and finish. That's it, next, 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 finish. The next step here is to import variables to the project. You have to add a station. That means a station is the controller itself. So you go to the Stations tab here, and let's add. We're adding the MP3300 IEC. Let's expand this to look at it. Remember that IP address was 192.168.15.83. And you can also put in a name, MP3300 IEC. Okay, that's the station properties here in the Quick Start. There's a step here to test cable COM. So let's click OK to that, and then you have test cable COM. Succeeded. All right, that means we have communication between the software and the controller. We're on step 4 now. OK to exit, yes to import tags. OK, exit, yes to import tags. And for import tags, you just click Get PLC Tags, select all and import. Here we go, Get PLC Tags. It's reading them from this address. See here? Select all and import. Now you can locate the tags in the Project Explorer under Real-Time DB Variables, Real-Time Database. I'll expand this here to find variables. There are the 4 variables that we imported. Okay, looks like it's working. Now I might add one detail here. If you ever lose this or want to come back in, there's this COM drivers. You can expand it. You see the Yaskawa MPIC PLCI. There's the COM IO driver settings and import from PLC database. Those are the 2 things we just did. COM IO driver settings. You can look at your station. So if you made a mistake, you can always edit this, and maybe you typed the IP address wrong. Okay, and if you ever want to come back in here and look at the variables, you can do import from PLC database as many times as you want and get the PLC tags again. And you can always select all or individual ones that you'll import. If they have the same name, they'll be overwritten. So I'm not going to do it. But just so you know, you can always come back in here. We show that in the quick start video also. Moving on here, we have create a simple HMI screen with new screen. We go to the Project Explorer, right click on screens and new screen, add a new screen. Screen 1's a fine name. We will not bother changing the name for now. Now it says locate properties toolbar on the far right and pin them so that they don't hide. You probably did this before with the previous video, so that's done here. Now create a button for HMI test contact. That's the variable. From the toolbox, rectangular buttons. I'll just drag a yellow one here, rectangular buttons in this toolbox here. How about a yellow rectangular button? It says here, drag and drop the required variable under the button. So I will do that. We got test contact was what we're going for. Just drag it and drop it right on there. That puts a variable under command state variable, execution command state variable. Label and adjust the text. Here's how you do that. You just click on it and I'll type enable. At the top here you can change the font or the font size or the format. Now on to step D, create an LED for the HMI test coil. Here's test coil. So we'll go to toolbox, lights, LEDs, drag or drop the screen here. Let's do lights, LEDs. How about a green light? We'll label and adjust text as before. Here's how editing text works. You click once to select the object, click again to get into the text, and then type status. And I had bold font size 12. Okay. You could drag and drop this variable like we did before, but there's a different way that you need to know how to do it, and that's what's listed here. You can add a variable using properties, execution, command state variable, and the ellipsis character. So here it is. I'll click on the status LED, the properties box, execution, command state variable. There's actually 2 ways to do it. One is the ellipsis box, or you can double click on the title of the row, I guess you'd call it. That brings up this tag browser. And with just a few variables, it's easy to find, but this list could be very long in a more full project. You can use the star, the asterisk character as a wildcard to type something more unique about the variable, like star coil, star, and then if you refresh, you'll see only the variables with the word coil, and that narrows down the list a lot, helps you find what you're looking for. Okay, and there it is. Here is the command state variable. And that filtering is explained here also. Step E is an edit box for HMI test in. Under toolbox, objects, edit box display. Okay, here's the toolbox. Go down to objects, and we have edit box display. Maybe I'll just draw this one in, the size that I like. I was on step 3, drag and drop the variable into the control. We're looking for test in LReal. Just drag that one in there. And let's look at the properties of this under style, format value. So here's the properties. Let's find style. Scrolling down to format value, it says X. I'll put an X.XX to give a couple decimal places of resolution. Also, the minimum and maximum display value are listed here too. Looks like I have those set correctly already. Step F, create an edit box for HMI test out int. Okay, same thing. We'll go to Edit Box Display. I'll draw one in there and put an HMI test out int. Now that's in the Edit Box Display variable. Now here I want to look at the properties under Style, and I want to change Read Only to True and Spin Enable to False. Let's see what that does. Under Style here, Read Only and Spin Enable, and then Apply to accept changes. You see how the spin, the little arrows up and down, those will be used to control the value of the variable up and down without having to actually type anything in there. And now we're on to aligning the objects. To select multiple items, then use the Layout menu, Object Alignment, Distribute Object Space. Let's try that here. I'll select all the items, Layout menu, Object Alignment, Distribute Object Space. It's given here a number of columns, a gap between columns, and a gap between rows. I believe that's in pixels. If I want just one column, then I have the row gap. If I don't like 5, I could try 9 or 10, and you see how they're spaced apart more. Okay, so that obviously that aligned them all up here to the left, and there are other buttons available to align them right or align them center. So let's try some of those out here. How about center horizontally? Okay, that's centered them all horizontally. I'll zoom out here. I'm using the control with the scroll wheel to zoom in and out. Another handy thing to make things look neat is to make them all the same width, whichever object you select first, and then use control to select the others. The first one I selected becomes the template, if you want to call it that. And then you can use this button here, same width, make it the same width as the first one. I did not want to select the status light because that would make the status light bigger than I want. I'm going to use Control Z to undo that. If you see the text goof up like that, just scroll a little bit, it'll refresh for you. And now I think this should go in the middle, so let's align center horizontally. Let's center these again here so they're all in the middle. I think that looks all right. For this training, we definitely will favor function over form, but there is some satisfaction to having everything laid out nice and neat, isn't there? On to part 5 here, to test the runtime simulation. The first step is to have a startup screen. This is not 100% necessary, but it doesn't take that long. Go to Quick Start, that's the name of the project, and it's under Properties, Execution, Startup Screen. So we go Properties, let's look for Execution here. Here it is, Execution, Startup Screen. Just double click here. There's the only screen we have. Double click to accept it, and now we have a startup screen. And start the project. Starting the project does also save the project. And it looks like it's starting. You'll always get this evaluation mode, and as it says here, this runtime will expire after 2 hours. That's just to keep everybody honest and use the runtime here for testing only, not as your permanent HMI. Okay, now we need to verify the functionality in part C, just to be sure everything's working right. By the way, you can also like resize this, and it just kind of stretches by default to the right size. I'll click Enable, and that turned on the test contact, which turned on the test coil, which turned on the status light. Perfect. Let me turn that off, and I'll use the arrow here. I'll set that to 2. Here's the 2. Now when I enable, that converts a 2.0 to a 2. What if I type in something a little more interesting, like 2.4? That still is a 2 in integer. And if I change it to 2.5, why, that converted integer is a 3. So it seems like it is working. So if you're doing this and you have some trouble, you can always just close it. It takes a little bit for it to shut down. And then you can go back in here and maybe check your properties or check your COM driver or whatever the solution might be and make your changes. You make your changes and then start this runtime again. I'm going to go on to run the project on the HMI hardware. The first step would be to confirm Ethernet communications to the HMI hardware. And I believe we've already done that because we have the VNC viewer already connected to the smart panel. So all you have to do is upload the project with the upload button. That's this one here. It looks kind of like a microwave oven. Let's upload project. And the first time you'll have to type in the server and the device path. as we see here. The server would be the IP address of the HMI. The device path is the directory on the HMI. These HMIs run Windows CE, so that's just a place on the flash disk. We recommend that you would make a new directory, just type it in there with your name and then the name of the project. That's just a good practice because this HMI can accept many different projects, and then you could choose which project to run. So that's just a good way of organizing them. So for me, the server was 192.168.15.198. You don't need a username and password. For the device path, you just click on this, select the speed by just close. Then I'll navigate to flash disk. Just click OK, and then put my name, Matt P, another backslash, and a quick start, and upload the project. Progress is happening. Almost done. And when you see upload terminated successfully, that just means it's done and ready to go. Now, if this is the first time you may have to accept a PLC driver install, you're likely not to see that here in the training equipment. Now, to run the project, you can stop whatever is running on there now, which I don't think is anything in this case. But stop the project and then start the device project. Let me just show you what happens here in the VNC viewer when I do that side by side. See if it'll let me do that. Here, start device project. So it's shutting down the previous project and now it's running mine. However, this project will not be the default project when the HMI powers up unless you take one more step, and that's this step D, set HMI runtime start. And to get to that, you got to go to VNC viewer file close. So let's close this project, and that brings you back here to the VIPA startup, they call it, the startup menu. You'll go into main, click auto start, and you see here the project path parameter. Click on this ellipsis button, and it will list all of the projects that are available on the HMI, and this is the only one I have right here. So you want to be sure you're not choosing somebody else's, a previous student's project. We do attempt to delete those, clean those up from time to time, but it's possible that you'll see other projects on there that are not yours, and so you want to choose the correct one. So I've selected my project. Now I just need to go back, and start. So we go back here, back again, and start button, and it's starting up and running my HMI project again. If something's not working for you, here are a few troubleshooting tips. Number one, be sure you entered all those IP addresses correctly. Number two, here, each object has a variable in its execution, meaning just check this command state variable or edit box display variable. Be sure it's the right variable. That's another common problem. Maybe the Movicon runtime and VNC viewer are running at the same time. You don't want to have the VNC viewer running your project and here, I'll just do this here now. So now I have two HMIs running at the same time, and that can sometimes cause problems. Here it doesn't seem to be very problematic yet, but you can have contradictions if like one HMI is requesting one page and the other HMI is requesting the other page. So generally not advisable. Run one or the other. At least if they're running the same project, be sure that they're not both running at the same time. And you can do that by either quitting the Movicon runtime, like I'll do right here, or you could go to the file menu here and close out the HMI project that is running on the physical HMI hardware. A couple more things for troubleshooting here. MotionWorks IEC should be in debug mode just so that you can check whether or not it's communicating, and that's with this debug mode toggle button here in the software. And be sure that MP3300 is in the run state. It should say running here. If you don't see this box, you can always get this up again by looking at the, it's called Project Control Dialog. Be sure it's running. If it's not running, you can hit cold or warm start like this. Stop, and then warm start. Be sure it's running. Now finally, for certification checklist, we have the project running on the Smart Panel HMI. Yes, sir. The enable button toggles on and off. Sure it does. The LED status follows the state of enable. It sure does. The input to the edit box has decimal points. This is actually one difference here. When you're on the HMI, you don't have a keyboard, so you would have to type with your finger on the physical HMI like this. The output edit box display shows the input value converted to an integer. Yes, it does. And a good way to do that is type in something 0.5. That's the cutoff where it'll round it up, 7.5 to 8. Very good. I think that's enough for a quick start. We had this little section on establishing comms with the VNC viewer, which we covered that in the previous video. This optional exploration, you could add more controls or browse the symbol libraries, add some more stuff here if you wanted to. If you know MotionWorks.EC, I guess you could add more code to that. But I think I'm not going to show anything else here. This is enough. And this will be the end of the Quick Start Mini Lab. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching this video. And please go to www.yaskawa.com/HMI for more information on Yaskawa's HMI products and Movicon HMI editor.